The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
On the afternoon of November 2nd, 2016, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mother named Sherri Papini went for a jog near her home in Mountain Gate, a small community just outside of Redding in Northern California's Shasta County. She left her 2 young children at daycare, laced up her shoes, and headed out into a mild autumn afternoon. However, she did not return home. Her husband, Keith Papini, returned from work that evening to find an empty house. The children were still at daycare, though Sherri should have picked them up already. So he used the Find My iPhone app to trace Sherri's phone, and he drove to the location it showed, a roadside near Sunrise Drive, about a mile from their home. What he found there was her cell phone and her headphones lying in the dirt on the side of the road. Wound around the earbuds were several strands of Sherri's blonde hair. Sherri Papini was gone for 22 days, and she would reappear on the side of a different road 150 miles away from her home, looking gaunt with a chain tied around her waist and the word Exodus branded into her back. It was a story that seemed to demand justice, and it would eventually get it, just not in the way that anyone expected. This is the story of the kidnapping of Sherri Papini. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the pod. My name is Kelsey.
And I'm Taylor.
And we have a crazy story for you today.
Well, you said this was 2016?
2016. We got a recent case.
How have I never heard of this?
I say this like on a lot of the cases we do, but like anyone who is into true crime, they know this case. They've heard it 5 times before and they're excited to hear it again. This is a wild story. And it's so fun for me to tell Taylor these stories because she doesn't know them. So I'm excited. Now, before we dive into the story, just a nice reminder for you guys, if you could follow us wherever you're listening. That way you just get reminders when we post new episodes every Tuesday. If you want more episodes or you want to listen ad-free, you can subscribe to our Patreon. The link is in the show notes. We've got a couple different tier options for you guys. And if you've been listening for a while and you're enjoying the show and your nails are painted green or they have sparkles, I'm going to need you to give us a 5-star rating.
5 stars.
5 stars, as long as you're enjoying. So that would be great, calling you guys out. But with that, I want to get right into the story because we have an insane one today. Like we said, Taylor has never heard this before. So I feel like for you guys, especially if you know this story, it's going to be a fun listen. Fun, never the right word, but I feel like you guys know what I mean.
We know what you mean.
So we are talking, of course, about the disappearance of Sherri Papini. Papini is obviously her married name, and Sherri was actually born Sherri Louise Grafe on June 11th, 1982. And she grew up in Mount Shasta, California, which is the kind of small, scenic Northern California town where everyone knows everyone and community really runs deep. Neighbors wave to each other as they're passing by, and it's just kind of a tight-knit community. Now, she was one of several children, and by the time she was an adult, the picture of her early life that would eventually emerge through court documents and investigative reporting was considerably more complicated than the image that she projected. But in November of 2016, none of that was public knowledge. What the world saw was the persona that she had spent years constructing. And so that's what we're going to start with today. So Sherri met Keith Papini, and the two were married in October of 2009. By 2016, they had two young children, a son and a daughter, and they were living in Redding, a city of about 90,000 people nestled at the northern end of the Sacramento Valley. It's flanked by mountains and the Sacramento River, so this is very beautiful, scenic, outdoorsy type of place to live.
Sounds gorgeous.
Sounds gorgeous. I want to go visit. But it was a great place to raise a family and to, just do life together. Now, Sherri had kind of cultivated this image of herself, like I said. And I think this is something we all do to a certain extent of, when you're around others, you're on your best behavior, you have your own problems and secrets. You're not projecting them to everybody. We all do it to a certain extent. I think Sherri did it to maybe a larger extent than most people would, but she really seemed from the outside like a super mom. That was kind of the image she gave. She was attractive, she was young, she was blonde, she was fit, she was energetic. And again, just from the outside, she appeared to be the type of mom who poured everything into her family and her home and taking care of her kids. But she's still also taking care of herself,
Yeah.
So she documented a lot of these aspects of her life online and presented this picture of domestic bliss. And that was kind of the way that everyone who was an acquaintance saw Sherri. That's how she posted pictures, and that's how she talked about her life. But those who were closer to Sherri kind of knew this wasn't really the case.
I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, the side of you that's online is definitely, I feel usually not 100% real in most cases.
Right. And then the people who are posting the real stuff and they're crying in their videos, the whole comment section is imagine pulling out a camera before you start crying, blah, blah, you know what I mean? So you can't win. You can't win. But it really was, it just seemed like this is a great life, great family, young, attractive couple, two cute little kids, and just living the dream.
In California.
But then on the evening of November 2nd, 2016, Keith Papini returned from work to find Sherri not at home. Normally, by this point, she would be at home with the kids. So Sherri's gone, the kids are gone. And so he calls the daycare and he learns that their two children had not been picked up from daycare. And this is something Sherri usually would have done by now. So he tries calling her, but she's not answering the phone. And so he checks the Find My iPhone app and sees that her phone is at the intersection of Old Oregon Trail and Sunrise Drive. So he drives over there. He's like, this is weird because it's not moving. It's not like she's on the road.
Yeah. Well, one weird thing to me is if you don't pick your kids up from daycare, they'll call parent one. So I'm assuming they called Sherri. No answer. So I found that odd that they didn't call the spouse. He wasn't notified before getting home that his kids weren't picked up from daycare.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Or maybe it's well, sometimes grandma picks them up, so they call grandma first. I'm not really sure, but it is a little bit of an interesting scenario. So he drives over to where the phone is. And when he gets there, he finds the phone lying in the dirt. The screen is broken, which it was not before, last time he had seen it at least. And with the phone are Sherri's headphones. And from what I've read, these are corded headphones. And she always wore these while she was running. Chillingly, strands of Sherri's hair, or presumably her hair, it's blonde hair, Sherri is blonde, but strands of hair are wrapped up with the headphone cord as if someone had yanked the headphones out of her ears, yanking some of her hair with them. So with this, Keith is fucking panicked. What is happening? And at 5:51 p.m. that evening, he called 911, very obviously in a state of panic. I'm going to play the 911 call for you.
Ooh, some audio.
911, what is your emergency? CHP transfer. Keith is on the line. Hello, can I help you?
Hello? Yeah, so I just got home from work, and my wife wasn't there, which is unusual, and my kids should have been there by now from daycare. So I was like, oh, maybe she went on a walk. I couldn't find her, so I called the daycare to see what time she picked up the kids. The kids were never picked up. So I got freaked out, so I hit, like, the Find My iPhone app thing, and it said that it showed her phone, like, at our end of our driveway. We don't have really good service.
Okay.
Not the end of our driveway, but the end of our street. So I just drove down there, and I saw her phone with her headphones because she started running again, and I found her phone, and it's got, like, hair ripped out of it, like, in the headphones. So I'm, like, totally freaking out, thinking, like, somebody, grabbed her.
Okay, what's your address?
Reading.
Okay, what's your last name?
Yes. Papini, P-A-P-I-N-I.
And your first name?
Keith.
Keith?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go pick up your children?
No, I'm going to call my mom and have her do it.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
I'm going to, like, knock on every door. Sherri, S-H-E-R-R-I.
And same last name?
Yes.
She white, female?
Yes.
What's her date of birth?
It is June 11th, 1982.
Is her vehicle there? Does she not have a vehicle?
She has a vehicle at the house.
Okay, the vehicle is at the house?
She's running.
How? Okay.
Yes, I'm in it right now driving, and I took a picture of her phone on the ground before I picked it up.
Okay, how tall is she?
5'3", 5'4".
How much does she weigh?
100 pounds.
Eye color?
Like a bluish blue.
Okay, hair color?
Blonde.
Do you know what she was wearing? Is there
No
something
idea.
she always wears?
I'm assuming she went running, so
Okay,
probably running athletic type clothes.
Okay, there's not an outfit she always wears or anything like that. Does she run with a dog or by herself?
By herself.
Okay. What time were the kids
We just started running again, and we live in a... No,
When's the last
sorry,
time?
I'm Superman right now.
When's the last time you heard from her?
She sent me a text asking me if I was coming home for lunch.
What time was
She's got a
that?
whole bunch of mixed... give me 1 second. She sent me a text at 10:47 asking me if I was coming home from lunch from work. And I said, sorry, long day. And that was the last. Never spoke to her on the phone, never any other contact.
Okay, and what time are the kids supposed to be picked up?
Way before 5:30. She usually goes at like 4:45.
Okay.
4:30, 4:45.
Okay, are you headed back to the house, or where are you at right now?
I'm at the end of the driveway where I'm at the Old Oregon Trail and Sunrise where they meet, because that's right where I found her phone on the ground. You're telling me that something happened to her is the way I'm looking at it. Then there was hair like in the headphones. Like it got ripped off, or like the grab.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know you're trying to keep me calm, but obviously.
Yeah. What kind of vehicle are you in?
I'm in a black Kia Optima. Oh my God.
Okay.
And we live down kind of a sketchy street, so I don't know if I'm allowed to knock on everybody's door, but I will if I'm allowed to do that.
Well, let's just have the officers contact you so they can start, processing everything, figure out what's going on, okay? And I understand you're freaking out a little bit. We want to make sure we get your kids, make sure they're okay.
Yeah, I'm going to call my mom and have her.
Yeah, they've been stuck at this. Your phone number?
Yes. Do you want me to wait right here for somebody?
If you want to head back to your residence so they can contact you there, and in case she does return.
Okay.
Okay. We'll have them contact you at your residence. Call us back if anything changes, all right?
All right, so they're going to call me the number you just took down, the 355?
They'll probably call you when they're on their way, and they're going to come out in person.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
What's his name again?
Keith.
Poor Keith. He sounds genuinely so anxiety ridden and nervous, and he's rambling, and I feel terrible in this moment listening to him make that phone call.
Yeah, and I agree. To me, it sounds very genuine. Like he is freaking out because he's this is one of those scenarios where there's no innocent explanation, it seems, for it would have to be some really weird, crazy shit happen. Like it's hard to come up with an innocent explanation for why her headphones and phone would be on the side of the road with her hair like tangled in it. And, you know, she wasn't fucking taken by somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, the way I would not be happy if they're like, yeah, we'll call you back. I'd be like, no, you're supposed to stay on the phone with me until the officers get here. But you can hear him like even
Yeah.
like hyperventilating.
You can hear his like as the 911 call goes on, he gets more anxious throughout.
Yeah. Because I think he's like trying to reason with like what is happening here.
I think it really starts to like it sounds like it's really settling in his mind as the phone call is like going on. He's starting to get more panicked.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing's interesting, but I was interested to hear like what your perspective was on his, because that's one of the things in a lot of true crime stuff is everybody's always like, whenever there's a 911 call, it's like, oh, well, they said this weird, or they don't sound upset, or they sound like they're acting or whatever. Not saying that about this call, but it's always interesting to me to hear someone's reaction to a 911 call when they don't know the story yet, so... All right, guys, so I just moved into a new apartment. Yes, in the middle of summer. It was not fun. And as I'm unpacking, I open the fridge and I realize there's no fridge filter here. I don't have a pitcher filter. I've got nothing. And my first thought genuinely was, I know way too much to be drinking water straight from the tap. And yeah, the tap water might look clean. It always looks clean. But 3 out of 4 U.S. homes have toxic chemicals running through their pipes. There's lead, forever chemicals, microplastics, chlorine, and these can be linked to some pretty serious long-term health issues. And yeah, I could just buy a standard pitcher filter to put in the fridge. But even if I got one, that isn't catching most of these chemicals. So instead, I've been using AquaTrue. And honestly, the timing couldn't have been better. AquaTrue is a countertop purifier. There's no plumbing, there's no installation, which is a lifesaver when you're a renter and you're like me, where you're terrified to touch a pipe. But I love AquaTrue because there is evidence to back it up. It's been tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants using a patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system. It's featured in Business Insider and Popular Science, named Best Countertop Water Filter by Good Housekeeping. And 98% of customers say their water is cleaner, safer, and healthier. So if you're ready for your water to not just look clean, but actually be clean, it's time to head to aquatrue.com and use promo code ATrialByPodcast for 20% off. That's AquaTrue, AQUATRU.com. Promo code ATrialByPodcast for 20% off. You guys know I love my amateur sleuthing. Give me a cold case, give me a suspicious timeline, or my friend's loser boyfriend telling her a story that just doesn't quite add up. Any of those situations, I am on it. I will go full detective. I'm making a corkboard, I'm losing sleep, I'm built for this. But what I don't want to have to investigate is my wireless bill. And yet, there I was, spreadsheet open, cross-referencing charges, trying to figure out why my previous provider was apparently billing me like I had personally wronged them. Fee after fee after mystery fee after fee, none of them labeled anything useful, and all of them adding up to a number that should have come with a ski mask and a getaway car because it was highway robbery. I'm kidding, but let's just say the math was not mathing. But don't worry, guys, because Mint Mobile is on the case. With Mint Mobile, there's no mystery fees. It's just $15 a month for any of their plans, all on the nation's largest 5G network. Unlimited talk and text, high-speed data. You can bring your own phone. You can keep your phone number. And you don't have to investigate a single line item. You just set up your plan, pay $15 a month, and don't think about your wireless bill again. So if your current provider has you out here playing forensic accountant, it's time to switch to Mint Mobile. Just go to mintmobile.com/atrialbypodcast. That's mintmobile.com/atrialbypodcast. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Includes up to 20 gigabytes hotspot. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Obviously, Keith is beside himself. And by the following day, this story had blown up. He had contacted local media, and within hours of the story of the missing Redding mother, this had begun spreading not only like all over California, but kind of all over the country. The Shasta County Sheriff's Office launched a search, brought in the FBI, and began canvassing the area around Sunrise Drive where Sherri had been last seen. Volunteers poured in from across the community to help search for Sherri. Donations flooded a GoFundMe established for the family. And basically it was to accumulate reward money. So it eventually reached $50,000 for anything, like any type of tip that would lead them to finding Sherri. And tips came in, lots of them, from all across California, not just like in the Redding area. Keith did pretty much any interview or like any media appearance he could, trying to get the word out about what happened to his wife. And in a lot of these interviews, in my opinion, he seems clearly devastated. He told ABC News in one interview, quote, "It's excruciating. I don't like to think too much about it because I just assume that I'm going to get a phone call any second or she's going to show up at my house," end quote. He told reporters that his wife had been, quote, "definitely taken against her will," end quote, because that was, some people were trying to question, well, do you think maybe she just ran off on her own for any reason? And he's like, no, that her fucking hair was wrapped up in the headphones, Now, by the end of the first week, Sherri's story had made national headlines. Her face was everywhere. Local news, cable news, true crime programs, and eventually even the cover of People magazine. The narrative was almost unbearably compelling. A beautiful young mother, 2 small children, a devoted husband doing everything he can to find her. She's taken from this quiet, safe suburban road, and her phone left in the dirt, clearly indicating that something had been done to her, that this was against her will. And I think Sherri's case, in my opinion, is a very classic example of what journalists and researchers have long called missing white woman syndrome. Have you heard of this?
I feel like I've heard like a little bit about it, but, hit me with it.
Basically, it's just describing the pattern that cases that involve young, white, conventionally attractive women command national headlines, while other cases fly under the radar. Like, those are the news stories that blow up, is young, white, conventionally attractive, and fit. Those are the stories that tend to get the most attention, while, other cases are just kind of like lost in the sauce and don't get as much media attention. And, there's like a lot of debate about, is it the media? Is it the audience driving the media to focus on those stories? Or what can it be? But like Sherri Papini's story, it's classic missing white woman syndrome. And also just the fact that she's a housewife. She's living this very traditional lifestyle. She's a stay-at-home mom. She has this bleach blonde hair. Like, it's the very classic, what, the trope of an American housewife is.
And it's blown up within 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty quick.
It is quick. Now, the investigation began moving on multiple tracks simultaneously. Within hours of Keith's 911 call, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office had deployed search and rescue teams across the area surrounding Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail, combing the semi-rural terrain on foot. But they're combing it by foot and by vehicle. So they have searchers out walking through the forest, and they're driving around the areas, obviously. Now, at least 20 different warrants were issued in this case for things like cell phone tower data, surveillance footage from locations in Redding and Yolo County. Detectives subpoenaed Sherri's phone records, her bank account records, her email accounts, her social media profiles, anything that they could look into digitally to get a picture of what was going on in her life. Who was she talking to? When did the activity stop? Anything like that. Now, the FBI was brought in almost immediately, and not really as a courtesy, but because the evidence on the ground, the phone and everything, this suggested that this was obviously an abduction. And that's when the FBI can come in. And I guess I should give you a little bit of background. Normally, a kidnapping or a murder investigation, it's handled by the local police.
Yeah.
When the FBI comes in, is either they are requested to come in by whatever police department is handling the case because they need help, or if it becomes a federal investigation. And one of the biggest reasons something would become a federal investigation is if someone is kidnapped and taken across state lines. Because now it's not just a California case, this is a national case because we don't know where they're going. So this was one of the cases where they thought possibly this was some sort of human trafficking, and therefore it would be a federal investigation.
Okay.
So they bring in the FBI, which is good. Not that local police departments are always doing bad jobs or anything, but this is the FBI's bread and butter, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot
more
more resources.
Yes, for sure. So Sheriff Tom Bosenko, he urged the community not to panic because there was a lot of fear going on that this could happen in a community like this to a woman like this. And so he's telling people, don't panic. You know, we have dedicated an extraordinary level of resources to finding Sherri and making sure that everyone else in the community is safe. I would be panicking if I lived in this community. Like,
don't panic.
You would not catch me outside. I'll tell you that.
Lock your doors.
Yeah. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Literally.
But behind closed doors, the investigators were already asking the harder questions because really the physical evidence was very thin in this case. Yes, we have her phone, we have her headphones, we have her hair. And this all showed that Sherri had been there and this was probably where she was taken from. But these provided no clues about who could have taken her or why, if that was even the case. There, you know, of course, it seems pretty certain that she was taken, but they don't know that for sure. So the location, which again, this is like a stretch of road that's semi-rural. So it's not like there's businesses or, you know, even the houses, they're set very far back with long driveways in this area. So there's no cameras, there's no businesses, there's no witnesses. There's really nothing to pull from. So detectives go to looking into all of Sherri's like digital data, her cell phone records especially, because on those phone records, they find something that complicates this picture immediately and really complicates the facade that we talked about Sherri putting on. Mm-hmm. Because in Sherri's phone, there were 2 phone numbers saved in her contacts under women's names that actually belonged to men. Oh. Now, one of these men was a Michigan man named Donovan Miskey. And this was someone that Sherri had known for years and investigators would discover had been having an affair with. How she was having an affair with this man who lived in Michigan, I'm uncertain if there had been any physical contact, but the verbal exchanges and the text exchanges were an affair. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I believe in the online affair. Like when people just message people online and like cheat on their spouses that way. Still cheating, in my opinion, even if you never meet up, if you flirt on the internet.
100%. I agree.
Future Kelsey here. I did look into this after recording because I felt like that was a big question mark. And what it was is Sherri used to travel for different conferences when she was still working for AT&T. And it's believed that she met both of these men at conferences. So they met in person. There was a physical aspect to the affair, and then she was keeping in contact with them after. So apologies for the confusion there.
Now, the text messages that they found went back several months, right up to the days before Sherri's disappearance. In the period before she vanished, the 2 had been texting about plans to meet while Miskey was visiting California. So they were planning to meet up, and they were planning, if this had not been physical in the past, they were planning to get physical. Okay. They were planning to get it on. Now, the other man, he is unidentified. In court records, he's referred to as Man 2.
Man 2.
Which is funny to me for some reason. But he was also identified and investigated and talked to, but he was ruled out pretty quickly. Now, again, this even Man 2, these messages, they seem to be like somewhat romantic in nature. I just get the impression that they weren't as far advanced as the other guy, as the Michigan guy, the Miskey guy. So they were really more focused on Miskey. Now, in her messages to him, Sherri had described Keith, her husband, as evil. And this was language that had investigators looking in a direction that they hadn't really anticipated. Of course, in any time a wife or someone who's married goes missing or is murdered, first person they're looking at is the spouse.
Absolutely.
But I think that they had a similar impression of Keith as we did when we were listening to the 911 call. They're looking into him because that is what they have to do. But I think the gut reaction was that he seemed very genuinely upset and, scared by his wife going missing. But then when they see this text message where Sherri's like, my husband is evil, they're like, well, wait, why are you saying that?
Right. Now, I haven't heard the whole story yet, but imagine, okay, I'm assuming Keith is 100% innocent. Assuming right now in the story we are in.
Okay.
I'm imagining being Keith and during this whole investigation, you're suddenly hearing that your missing wife is having an affair with 2 people and then called you evil on the phone?
Bro. Yep. Yeah. It's rough.
It's tough.
It's tough. So this is really like for investigators, this brings up two possibilities that they are now focused on investigating. Number one, had Sherri run away from her marriage? Was this phone and everything planted because she's having an affair? She wants to leave Keith and whatever. Did she plan to leave? Number two, had Keith discovered Sherri's infidelity somehow and had done something to her himself? And these were kind of the two paths that they're looking down at this point. Is once they see there's some infidelity, they're focused on that rather than like, oh, this is some sort of stranger abduction where some random person just like lifted her off the side of the road. So detectives start pulling Keith in for some tougher questioning. They showed Keith these text messages between the men. Basically, they kind of ask him if, there's any infidelity in the marriage. And at first he's kind of like, no, kind of vague about it. And they're showing him the text and they're like, so you had no idea about these? And Keith swore he had no idea. He did not know about either of these men until that moment. They tell him about Miski. They tell him about man number 2. And he's just like shocked and heartbroken, like anyone would be, just like what Taylor was saying. However, he did acknowledge that there had been infidelity in the past in the marriage on Sherri's part. So even though when they were like first asking him, are you either of you guys having an affair? He says no, because he doesn't think she's currently having an affair. At least that's what he's telling them. But he does admit, he's like, yeah, no, we've had some issues in the past. So Keith did openly tell them about this. He seemed to be pretty honest about it. And again, he seemed pretty genuinely surprised about Sherri's latest transgressions. And I don't know for certain, but it does seem that investigators believed Keith when he said he didn't know about these. That's an impression I'm getting from hindsight. You'd have to ask the investigators if that's true, but that's my impression of it. Now, with all that being said, what this does illuminate for sure is that there are very obviously some things inside of this marriage that are more complicated than the public image suggested. So they are looking harder at Keith still. And he did take and pass a polygraph examination. But again, this affair, it just casts a long shadow, not just over the investigation, but over Keith, who is now the public face of this search. He's on TV, in tears, begging for any information on what happened to his wife. And now this information is slowly trickling out that, oh, there's some like cheating here. And so the public especially really starts to look at Keith.
Wait, do they have to release this information to the public? Like investigators, when they find little facts like that, like what's the benefit of them putting that information out?
I don't know for certain that they did put that information out, or if it was just like rumors were spreading amongst the town.
Okay.
Like among, the more local area. But I do know that like Keith got a lot of shit because people thought he was involved. But detectives did not limit their interviews to Keith. They fanned out in Sherri's social circle as well. So they're talking to friends, neighbors, anyone who had regular contact with the Papinis. And what they heard, again, it's just starting to paint this more complicated picture. And it's starting to look a little sus because friends and neighbors, like the way that they spoke about the Papinis' marriage was very different. Did I say smoke?
Yeah. I was like, you're like, the neighbors smoke. And I was like, oh, do they?
The way that they spoke about the Papinis' marriage, Eric, you can leave that in, was very different than like, again, this outside picture. I know I keep coming back to it. But they talk a lot about tons of arguments between the two, like very volatile. Keith was very controlling and she was very dramatic and seemed to have this need for drama. So like the two of them together, it was kind of a volatile situation. Sherri's best friend, a woman named Jennifer Harrison, she told investigators that Sherri had confided in her about what she described as an abusive dynamic at home. According to Jennifer, Sherri had once told her, quote, "If I ever try to leave him, he'll kill me," end quote. Yeah.
Oh, man. She said that she verbally told her this?
Yes.
Okay.
And this reminds me of the last episode we did with Hella Crafts. So Hella Crafts was telling her friends, if something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. And we've got a similar situation going here. She also described Keith's expectations for Sherri in blunt terms. And this is what Jennifer is telling the police. She says, quote, "What Keith wants is a 1950s housewife that cooks, cleans, does everything around the house," end quote. And Sherri, I get the impression, she really wanted a more glamorous lifestyle, more exciting, she didn't want to just be a stay-at-home mom. She was very into appearances. She seemed to enjoy attention. And I don't think that, staying at home and taking care of the kids was giving her what she wanted out of life.
Wasn't fitting into her lifestyle.
Wasn't really fitting into her this wasn't what she had dreamed it would be.
Yeah.
Is
okay.
Kind of what the vibe I get.
I mean, motherhood is hard. It's a lot harder, I feel like, than we like to think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine from watching like you and my sister-in-law and stuff, like especially with my nephews and everything. Like I see some tough moments, dude. It ain't easy.
Also, I'm not hating. It's okay to be a mom and then have your lifestyle outside of that.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like you have to, or you'll go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But really, these were not small things to investigators. In any missing persons investigation, the spouse is obviously the first person you look at. And here are the friends of this missing woman saying that she had been afraid of him. And on top of that, Keith was the one that found this evidence that made it look like she was snatched off the side of the road. So, again, there's those kind of like two different paths you can go down I guess really three. Number one, she was snatched off the side of the road while she's jogging. Number two, maybe she ran away from this marriage because she's having these affairs and she's saying she's, scared of Keith, and she's planting this evidence to make it look like she was snatched off the side of the road. Or number three, Keith did something to her and he put that, planted that there to make it look like she was snatched off the side of the road. So for investigators, it's like, yeah, they're getting a lot of information, but it's starting to like just give them more questions than it is answers, really. So even after Keith passes the polygraph test, there's lingering doubts about his innocence, and especially, again, in their social circle because of what Sherri had been telling everyone. Now, she had only been telling these things to, her closest friends, but once she goes missing, like if my friend had been telling me this stuff about her husband and then my friend goes missing, you bet your motherfucking ass I am blasting it on the internet. I'm outside with a megaphone. I'm getting in front of cameras and I am telling everybody.
Oh, I'm knocking on the police station doors as soon as they open.
Oh yeah. Like I am she said he was going to kill her if she tried to leave. I would be pointing a finger at him for sure. And the internet starts to pick this up. And predictably, they had already tried and convicted Keith. There was no, innocent until proven guilty. True crime forums were full of theories about this controlling husband, the troubled marriage, and the wife who had tried to escape, but, he didn't let her. And Keith was aware of all of this. He had to be. He's seeing it because he's trying to keep up with what people are saying, with what the media is saying, because he says he wants to find his wife. He would later describe the media attention as a, quote, double-edged sword, telling reporters that, quote, rumors, assumptions, lies, and hate had been both exhausting and disgusting. He kept showing up for interviews anyway, and he told one interviewer, quote, "If she's listening, I want to say we are trying. We are trying the best we can, and I'm sorry I'm not there. I'm doing everything I can, and I love you," end quote. And it was the kind of statement that, depending on how you were looking at the case, it either really fucking pissed you off because you think this guy did it, or you took it as, oh, this is so sad. He sounds so genuine. And it was really divided when it came to the internet. And that's the thing about the internet is now these cases are living in the media in real time. It's not just the news reporting on what the police are saying, but it's everyone on the internet speculating. Like, I don't know. Have you heard about the Nancy Guthrie case?
No.
So I think she's the host of Good Morning America. Her mom was like kidnapped and there's been ransom notes. So, and this is just over the last few months. So everyone that is interested in true crime on the internet, there's so much speculation and debating, and everyone's keeping up with it, like, in real time on the internet. And the mom still hasn't been found, but people are already speculating. It's like happening while the investigation is happening and not like after the fact, after an investigation's closed and you have all the facts, right? So that's kind of what was happening in Sherri's case as well. Now, on top of the marital problems, there were also just problems kind of in Sherri's life. So Sherri had previously been working at AT&T as like an account executive, and she had actually lost her job earlier that year and had just become a stay-at-home mom. And this made her obviously financially dependent on Keith. And she described to friends that she was feeling surveilled by him. Like he was constantly checking in on her, and he would question who she was talking to, what she was doing, what she was wearing, like, you know, comments about her outfits, things like that.
I mean, is that trust issues from her previous infidelities though?
That's a good question. And I think, you know, I think it's a spectrum of controlling behavior. Like, I think after past infidelity, there's an acceptable level of like being like, well, who are you with?
Oh, I'm not condoning it. I'm saying like, is he reacting like this because now he's mistrustful?
I'm sure that either way, yes, I'm sure that affected it. But I don't know if this controlling behavior started before that infidelity or not. That's really what I'm not sure. But, you know, according to Sherri, it was like to an abusive extent. That's the way that she seemed to portray it to her friends from what I've read. Now, investigators actually traveled to Michigan to interview this Miskey guy, and they ultimately determined that he was not involved in Sherri's disappearance. So he is cleared. Man 2 is also cleared, though the details on the reasoning for both men being cleared are like very scarce. Detectives, from what I could find in reporting, it was just like, they're not involved. So I trust that they have good reasoning for that. Like, this guy was in Michigan, like lived in Michigan. They could probably show that he was not in California at the time.
Oh, so that's hilarious. Could you imagine him not, like, he didn't think he would ever be in this kind of case. I'm talking about Michigan man. And then they just show up at his door like, hey, we came to interview you. And he's like, this is crazy.
And by the way, it don't matter if you delete them. It don't matter. They can get them back. They can, I don't know for how long, but like they can recover your deleted text messages.
You know, I wasn't paranoid about my text messages, but I definitely am now.
I know, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for that next level anxiety.
You should be. But anyway, this Michigan guy is probably like, oh my God, he's probably embarrassed, you know, that everybody's read these text messages.
Is he single? Does he have a wife?
I don't know for certain. I don't think so, because the fact that we have his name and I didn't read anything about him having a wife, like I think if he had a wife, that would have been mentioned every time he was mentioned. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I didn't read for sure that he was unmarried. But yeah, I think for everyone involved, a fucking insane situation. You know what I mean? But the community's response was extraordinary. Like, everyone was banding together to help find Sherri. There's a Facebook page called Help Find Sherri Papini, and this was the central hub for updates and for organizing searches and things like that. Like I said, there's that GoFundMe that eventually raised almost $50,000 for a reward. There were people who had never met Sherri Papini, and they didn't even know anyone who knew her, that would show up to volunteer for searches and go out and search fields and trails. Women in Reading were scared, too. They changed their jogging routines. Some stopped going out alone altogether, which honestly, when this stuff happens and the person is not caught, you should do. Like, I remember there was a girl attacked here in the metro parks, and I think it was just like last summer. She was attacked, like kind of beaten up. She ended up being okay. The guy ran off, but he wasn't caught. And you bet your ass I did not go running in those metro parks. But 2 weeks in, hundreds of people searching in. There's no physical evidence of an abductor. There's no credible leads pointing to some sort of outside suspect. And investigators, again, they just have more questions than answers. And then in the early morning hours of November 24th, 2016, everything changed. At approximately 4:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day, several people called 911 to report a woman along the side of Interstate 5 near Woodland, California, roughly 146 miles south of Reading, well outside of Shasta County.
Hi, I have an emergency. There's a lady on the side of the road. She's chained up. She needs an ambulance.
Do you know where you are? No. Are you chained up?
Yes. The woman was on the side of the road, disoriented. She had a chain wrapped around her waist. She was emaciated, reportedly down to 87 pounds, having lost, obviously, a significant amount of weight in the 22 days that she had been missing. Her nose appeared to be broken. Her hair had been messily chopped off into like a bob when she had long hair before this. And on her right shoulder, burned into her skin, was a brand of the word Exodus, presumably a reference to the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible, telling the story of Moses leading the Israelite people out of slavery in Egypt, a narrative centered on bondage, suffering, and ultimately liberation. The word Exodus itself means departure or escape. So very interesting the way that it coincides with what happened to Sherri. You know, taken in bondage, suffering, ultimately liberated. She is now found and rescued by these people on the side of the road.
Sherri's pretty rough at this point.
She's pretty rough at this point. And the story that she told to responding officers and then later in formal interviews with investigators was detailed and harrowing. She said that she had been taken by 2 Hispanic women. They were armed, masked, and their faces were deliberately obscured throughout her captivity, though she could tell that one was significantly younger than the other. She said that they had forced her into a dark-colored SUV, put a pillowcase over her head, and driven her to an unknown location, to a house specifically. She said that she had tried to stay awake during this drive, trying to track the turns and the sounds to so she could remember where she was going for, one day if she's rescued, she can say where she was taken to. But she wasn't able to stay awake. She said she kept losing consciousness. She says she keeps losing it, passing out, but she also never mentioned anything about them drugging her or giving her anything to eat or drink before or during this drive. So by losing consciousness, I think she really just means falling asleep, she was falling asleep. Now, she does note that the roads were windy, which was making her super nauseous. She said, she gets really car sick, but I just feel like it would be really hard for me to fall asleep if I had kidnapped.
I was going to say that. I'm I don't know if anything could, other than drugs, of course, could make me fall asleep right after getting kidnapped in the car.
Yeah, I don't know either. But the next thing that she said she remembered clearly was being taken out of the vehicle. And she said by this time it was dark outside, so she couldn't really see what was going on. Again, there's a hood over her head. She said it was thin enough that light was coming through and that she could kind of see shadows and outlines of things, but she couldn't see. Then she's brought inside and chained up to a metal pole in a boarded up room. They do eventually remove the hood from her head. Her captors, she said, had played what she described as, quote, really annoying Mexican music, end quote.
Oh, no, Sherri.
Now, she would later confirm, when they're trying to narrow down, well, what does really annoying Mexican music mean? She does later confirm that it was mariachi music, which seems really lively to be playing for your kidnapping victim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, she said that they
were
had...
trying to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
They were trying to put her onto something. They said, listen to this. It's good.
Dude, and honestly, really annoying I fucking love mariachi music. It is one of those things where it is very I think lively and upbeat to where if you are being kidnapped, I could see how it would take on a different tone.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It probably wouldn't sound as good.
Yeah. It's in scary movies when they play I'm thinking of what's the one movie where it's tiptoe through the wind.
Oh, yeah, but
it's
that's
supposed
creepy
to be a
music.
kid's song. No, but on its own, it's a little happy kid song, but then when you put it in the scary movie, it's fucking terrifying. You know what I mean? It takes on a different vibe about it. So she said that they would feed her once a day. It's just some rice and tortillas that she said tasted, quote, horrible and, quote, like crap. She had been forced to use the bathroom in a bucket filled with kitty litter, so she was never allowed to go to the bathroom. They did a couple times let her take a shower, but they would basically hold her at gunpoint while she was in the shower. She said that she had attempted to escape a couple different times, and each time she was beaten for it. And she looked beat up. Again, her nose was broken. She was bruised and beaten, and she did not look well. Obviously, she, according to Keith, I think she was 87 pounds when she was rescued. This is a grown woman. 87 pounds is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And according to Sherri, the brand on her shoulder that said Exodus, she said that this had been punishment for the escape attempt. So again, it's an interesting word choice, the Exodus. Because again, if it's referring to the book of Exodus, what else would it be referring to? And I've never read the book of Exodus, so this is just like from what I, Googled about like what is book of Exodus is. But like they say, ultimately liberation. So like if you kidnap someone, they're trying to escape, you're punishing them for trying to escape. Like, oh no, bitch, you should be scared. You're never escaping. Exodus is a weird word to choose.
I was thinking of it as more like if they're saying like, oh, we are punishing you to liberate you from your like past transgressions.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's
like,
what I was thinking when you said Exodus on there.
Like almost like punishment as like repentance. Like
Yeah.
you're okay. Ooh, interesting thought. So she described her captors in pretty vivid detail. She said one of them wore very large hoop earrings. The younger one had very thin, almost drawn in eyebrows. And she said that they had told her things designed to break her spirit, that no one was looking for her, that nobody believed that she had been taken, that the police had given up because they thought that she just ran away on her own. She said that she had even believed at one point that she was going to be sold to someone in law enforcement, a buyer who was already waiting. And as she's telling this story, she's kind of like imitating what the women are saying to her. And from her imitations, it sounds like they didn't speak good English. So like instead of being like, oh, they said I was going to be sold, she's like, they were like, we have buyer, cop. And that's what she took as like, this is, they're selling me to a police officer or something. And the way, like whenever she's describing the way they speak, it's like a similar, like very broken, English. Now, 22 days after she had vanished, she said that the younger woman who seemed to like take pity on Sherri throughout this whole experience, like, sneaking her extra food and like just being a little bit kinder to her than the other woman. She said that this one forced her back into the SUV and dropped her on the side of the interstate highway in the middle of the night, still bound, still branded, and still starved. But according to Sherri, this younger woman was really her savior. That's the way she talked about this woman. It's like, she saved my life. She rescued me from this situation. And she talked about it with like a lot of gratitude for this young woman who had been her captor. And
rescued you? She have Stockholm syndrome or something?
We're going to find out. The story, though, that she's telling, it's sensational. And if you thought like this was big in the media before, once all this comes out, oh, baby, like this is worldwide news. Like this is everywhere. It's a really incredible story. She is, again, missing white woman syndrome. So the story is already popular. And I think this is one of those things where like when something like that happens and it's obvious she was taken, usually the chances of her coming back alive are very, very slim.
Especially after 22 days.
Yeah. So when she comes back, it's like this really incredible, like happy ending to this story. There's this very tearful reunion with Keith, and it just fucking blows up. Now, the medical examination of Sherri confirmed the physical trauma, weight loss, broken nose, the brand, the bruising. But Sherri says that she was never raped during her captivity, and there's no signs of sexual abuse either. Now, with all that being said, there is some debate about when what I'm about to tell you about starts. So slowly over time, there are some things that start to point out as like not seeming quite right about this whole thing. We're going to talk to a breaking point where we realize this was not right. Investigators kind of talk about it as if they kind of had a suspicion leading up to that point. And we're going to go over like what they say some of the suspicions were. And I think some stuff that is just purely hindsight. But first, I want to kind of skip ahead in the story to really what breaks this case open so we can have an understanding of like why these things are suspicious and what they eventually point to. So when Sherri was found, the clothing that she was wearing was obviously collected for evidence, and they did a lot of forensic examining. And on that clothing, they found the presence of a male DNA profile. There was also female DNA that did not belong to Sherri. And both of these DNA profiles are run through CODIS, which is like the federal system that stores DNA. So like anyone who's a felon, their DNA gets put into the CODIS database. So once they run a profile, anyone who has been convicted of a felony is in there and they can run and like look for matches. So they put it in CODIS and it does not return a match. However, in 2020, nearly 4 years after Sherri had been taken, investigators decide that they want to use some new technology to look into this DNA. And that new technology is genetic genealogy. Now, basically what genetic genealogy is, did we talk about this on a recent episode? Okay. For anyone who hasn't listened to the recent episode, genetic genealogy is basically you put your DNA into a system. It is linking you up based on your DNA with people you're related to. So they put this DNA profile into a genetic genealogy database, and it's not going to just look for a match to this DNA, but it's going to look for any distant relatives of this person, of this DNA profile. And using the male DNA profile from Sherri's clothing, they were able to build out a family tree from this unknown profile. So using genetic genealogy, investigators were able to eventually match this DNA profile to relatives of a man named James Reyes. Now, James's DNA was not available in the system, but when they realized that this unknown profile matched some of his relatives, they really honed in on James. The reason being is this was a man who had known Sherri Papini since they were teenagers. They had grown up in the same area. They had dated briefly years before she married Keith. And as it turns out, they had been back in contact with each other since at least late 2015. The contact had been careful and deliberate. They communicated through prepaid burner phones, keeping their conversations hidden from Keith.
Well, that's suspicious right there if they're communicating on burner phones.
But they're also, having some sort of emotional affair. So is it to just hide from Keith? Whatever.
With her previous two guys she was messaging, she was just had them under female contacts. She went to this link to hide this guy, this specific guy?
Yes. And before she, I could see it the other way where like first she's doing the contacts thing and then, maybe Keith finds out or whatever. So she switches to doing burner phones to like really disconnect it. But starting with burner phones and then being like, fuck it, I'll just put them under women's names instead. Like that seems weird to me.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is detectives, if you ask them now in interviews that I've seen with them now, they say that they weren't very surprised by this connection because in those 4 years of investigating, they started to see things that really weren't adding up about Sherri's story. And that, DNA match that was just kind of blew the whole thing open of, we had this gut instinct that something wasn't right and we were right. Something wasn't right here. Now, again, there's debate about like, were they really suspicious of her this whole time or are they just saying that in hindsight, now that they have the answer? I don't fucking know.
Who knows?
But what I will say is there is some suspicious shit about all of this from day one. From day one, the very first interview she gives after being rescued, it's fucking weird. So we're going to go through some of this weird shit in the 4 years leading up to that DNA match. So, number one, this description she's giving of these Hispanic women, the really annoying Mexican music, the like way she mimics the way they're speaking, the way she describes them is with their big hoop earrings and their drawn on eyebrows, it's giving pretty fucking racist.
Yeah. It sounds like she just kind of Googled a description of what she thinks a Hispanic woman looks like.
Yeah. And they're playing mariachi music.
Yeah.
It's giving missing racist white woman syndrome. So yeah, it's very, very stereotypical descriptions and just fucking weird. I just think it's weird. The mariachi music fucking threw me through loop. Not that it's impossible, but then it's like they're feeding her rice and tortillas. And Redding, the thing about this area that you need to understand is Redding, where she was taken from, where she lived, they had a significant Latino population. And within weeks, investigators had released composite sketches of these two women, the two female suspects. And these are detailed sketches. They're based on Sherri's descriptions. And they started circulating throughout the city and the surrounding areas. And Alan Ernesto Phillips, who is the co-founder of the Northern Hispanic Latino Coalition, he told ABC News later on that the sketches really rattled the Reading Latino community. He said, quote, Latino women were fearful that they might look like one of those people in the sketches, end quote. And the fear was like palpable. People were scared that they were going to be blamed or brought into something that they didn't do simply based off the fact that, you know, she's saying these are two Hispanic or Latino women.
Right.
And giving this like really odd racist description. And I want you guys, if you're like questioning me saying it's a racist description, watch the videos and I'll try and cut in some clips throughout the episode of Sherri giving interviews, because it's not just what she's saying, it's the way in which she's saying it that really gives you a fucking vibe. I'll tell you that. In this first interview that she does the day that she is being rescued, they're at their home. You know, police take them to the Papini's house and they do it there. They're trying to make her comfortable. Her demeanor is like she is entertaining. Like she's entertaining a new group of friends. The way in which she tells the story, and I should lead with everybody reacts to trauma differently. Some people have like, you know, I think I'm a dark humor person. Like I just start, if something bad is going on, I start to say the most fucked up shit I can think of. Because I'm just like, I just got to make it funny and it'll make it better, right?
I think I have the same reaction.
Yeah. So like, you know, everybody's different. And this is one of those things where I could see how in hindsight, it's very obvious that the way she's acting is weird. But maybe in the moment, you're just telling yourself like, oh, this woman's been through some horrible shit and she's just like, this is her weird reaction to it. And it's just not how we think we would react. But I think it's fair to say from all of the evidence that we're going to talk about, this is some suspicious like demeanor that she is giving. She's cracking jokes. She is really focused on a lot of details that like don't matter. But then when they start to press into the ones that do, like, you know, well, what did they do to you once you were in the basement? She doesn't really have detailed descriptions of events, but she has very detailed descriptions of what she can see, what she can hear, what she can smell, what the food tasted like, the music that was playing, those sorts of things. But when it comes to like her actual interactions with these captors, very non-descriptive when it comes to the events themselves, which is interesting. And again, you could go back, you can argue like, well, there's trauma. Like she probably doesn't remember some of it, or it's confusing, or it's
or
a
she
blur.
blocked it out.
Yeah, she blocked it out. Who knows? And I think those are valid points. It's just when we get to the evidence, you'll start to be like kind of fucked up. Now, I will say, I'm strategically picking a clip that gives it off a weird vibe. There are portions where she's quiet, she's crying, head down, all of these different things. So just being very straightforward with that. But like, I'm just trying to give you like an idea of what I'm talking about here.
I want my husband, and they weren't even untying me. And he said, "We did untie you." And I was like, "Get the fuck out." "No, you didn't." Because he yelled back at me like, "We did." And I'm like, "No, you didn't."
I mean, you heard what I said a little bit ago where I was like, I feel like you're going to tell me this was a big publicity stunt and I'm going to throw up. So how soon after returning is this?
So I couldn't find the exact date of this interview, but I'm like 80 to 90% certain that this is 4 days after she was rescued. It was 4 days after Thanksgiving. So just days after being rescued and going through all of this.
Oh, no. Yeah, she doesn't sound, I mean, okay, so I can't say she doesn't sound traumatized because everyone would sound different traumatized, but she sounds like she's telling a story. Like she is describing like a fictional event. That
is the impression I got throughout the whole thing, is she's telling a story. And again, there's parts where she does like get upset and she pauses and she is, you know, crying, or she has her head down or whatever. She seems to be struggling. So it doesn't all sound like that, but it just sounds odd to me. The other thing is, again, like the detail of what she's focusing on throughout this whole thing. Like they're trying to ask her, you know, well, what happened once you're chained up to the pole? She's not really like, again, it's like the events are very vague, like very unclear, you know, not detailed. But then she's like, I really smelled this very particular, like she talks about the hood over her head. They ask her what happens after she gets into the car. What's the next thing you remember? And she goes, well, I just remember the smell of the laundry detergent on the hood that was on my head, and that if
That
this
makes
is
sense.
real, yeah, for sure. But that's where I'm saying like there's this like is dichotomy the right word between the level of detail she gives about things and her senses versus the events of what occurred. And guys, I have to apologize because once we finished recording this episode, we had almost 3 hours of raw audio. Now, we always cut a lot of stuff out and there was like a lot of, useless chatter tangents. But really in the end, after going through editing, it was almost 2.5 hours long. So we were expecting this to be one episode and it is going to have to be 2. Anything that's over 2 hours, I have to break it up into 2. It is just too much work, time, and energy to have it for just 1 week. So I apologize because it's not the most clean, like done break because we weren't expecting it to be 2 episodes. But we are going to finish the story next week. And don't worry, next week I will give you like a summary of everything that we talked about this week very briefly in the beginning just to catch you up on what we talked about. And, I'll re-explain this again because I know it's going to be kind of like a really like harsh cut. But I'll make sure that we make it flow as well as we can. And I think you guys are going to be very interested because next week we're going to have a lot more of audio clips and things that we're listening to from Sherri Papini, her talking to the police, their thoughts, their reactions, and yeah, there's still so much to go through in this story. Now, with that being said, if you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could listen to more right now, we do have a new bonus episode out on Patreon. So you have to be in the judges tier or higher to get the bonus episodes. And the bonus episodes are shorter. They're like 30 to 35 minutes long normally. But this week's bonus episode is about the murder of Karen Pennell. So Karen Pennell was a 39-year-old airline gate agent, and she was found stabbed to death in her home in Oldsmar, Florida. And her body was actually discovered by her boyfriend. But the crime scene itself held a chilling detail. There was a word written on the wall next to Karen's body, written in her own blood. There was blood on Karen's fingers, so it seemed like she had left investigators a dying clue. And the word written on the wall was ROC, which is actually the name of Karen's ex-boyfriend, Rock. Yet despite what seemed to be Karen's dying declaration of who had done this to her, Rock is not the one in prison for Karen's murder today. Because as detectives dug into the other evidence at the scene, the dried blood that was underneath the word Rock, the fingerprints, the phone records, and a very ill-timed pizza delivery, a very different story began to emerge. This is one of the most interesting cases I've ever heard when it comes to the crime scene evidence. And I think it's a really great example of investigators doing a great job and not putting blinders on and only looking down one path, one possibility. So if you are looking for another episode now, you can subscribe to Patreon. The link is in the show notes of this episode that you're listening to currently. So if you're in the judges tier or above, you have access to the bonus content. And this is our 5th bonus episode. So if you're like, man, I really wish I had more episodes to listen to, maybe you're on a road trip, whatever it may be, you can subscribe now. You'll have 5 episodes there. Again, they're like mini episodes. I would call them 30 to 35 minutes long. But we, I think, have some interesting ones there for you. So go ahead, check that out if you're interested. And then if not, we will see you guys next week for part 2 of Sherri Papini. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy next week's episode, especially if you already know this case and you kind of already know how it turns out. I think listening to Taylor's thought process and her reactions to things for me was very, I hate using the word fun, but I think I can say fun in this case because no one besides Sherri Papini was physically hurt. But yeah, go ahead and check that out. And if not, we'll see you next week.